Hello, and welcome to a special legislative update. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, Station Manager for Manatee Educational Television, and it's our pleasure to have with us once again Representative Vern Buchanan from the 13th Congressional District. Or it's the 13th Congressional District up till January 1, and then it becomes the 16th Congressional District. Representative Buchanan, thank you so much for joining us again, sir, and giving us an update on the critical issues that are facing this community and the nation.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks for the opportunity. As we were talking about a few minutes ago, it's so important to have this venue, this opportunity for Manatee and Sarasota counties.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Now, Congressman, just recently you visited both the Sarasota and Manatee County EOC, Emergency Operations Center, as we go into a season of hurricanes. Tell us a little bit why that's important for you to interact with them and what you found when you went there.
Well, I was in Manatee County this morning, Sarasota yesterday. It's city, county, state government. The governor was on the line, as well as I bring the federal dimension to make sure we're doing everything we can to help the responders here in Manatee and Sarasota County. But the bottom line is, the hurricanes, they're unpredictable. We've got this hurricane somewhat maybe bearing down on us. It depends on what happens, how it comes through Cuba. I'm hoping it seems like it's trending more west. But the bottom line, you got to be prepared. We're hoping for the best, but you got to be prepared also for the worst. But we're hopeful. But my goal, frankly, is public safety and doing our part, making sure the federal agencies, and there's quite a few of them, that interface with county and city officials, that we're doing everything that we need to do. And if we're not, it's my job to make sure they are.
Well, I'm sure they appreciate your visit and your involvement with both Manatee and Sarasota County. Have got a great team of professional people who really are, anxious to help in any way possible. And knowing that they have a federal friend right there beside them makes their job a little bit easier.
I can tell you, Manatee County's got a state-of-the-art. The citizens, the leadership here in the community made a commitment a couple of years ago when they put that new facility in. I could just tell people, rest assured, it's probably one of the top 67 counties in the state. I visited 6 or 7 of these EOCs. It's right at the top of the list in terms of state of the art, and people really need to see it. They'd be proud of it. But the bottom line, it's going to help prevent as much damage locally if you do have a storm by having that kind of capability.
And an informed community is a prepared community, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, and I would just suggest to all your viewers, you need to be prepared. I mean, again, we're hopeful it doesn't come this way, but we also know that Mother Nature has a way of deciding which way these things go, but we think it's going to go further out to the west.
Well, it's coming this way, and one of the big events that's been years in the planning is just about to occur in just a few days, and that's the Republican National Convention to be held in Tampa, which is a huge event for this area and for this region. What does it mean to have a Republican National Convention in this area?
I think the big thing is jobs. It's economic development. There's a lot of people that are taking room nights and using facilities and hotels here in Manatee County. I know I heard today a lot of the Secret Service and others that are actually here in the county. But the bottom line is it's big from an economic development standpoint. Regardless of your politics, it's good for the community, and it's going to create someone said in the Super Bowl, they have credentials for the media, 5,000. For this, there's 18,000 as it relates to the media. Then you got all the delegates from 50 states that are here. So it's a great way to showcase Tampa Bay, which also includes Manatee and Sarasota counties. So we're very excited to have that opportunity. It's a great opportunity for the region and for the state.
And you're looking forward to attending that. I mean, it's a huge thing with leaders from around the country going to be there. I mean, you're looking forward to attending?
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I mean, obviously, we've got our platform is mainly going to be focused on economy and the jobs, and also dealing with our financial crisis as it relates to the debts and deficits. And I know we'll have some time to talk about that. But the biggest issue, I think, on people's minds today, and hopefully that gets addressed here in the next convention, what are we going to do about getting working families back to work?
Well, and we're going to touch on that in just a moment. But since your last visit here, Congressman, the Supreme Court ruled that individual mandate in the new health care law is constitutional. I want to hear your reaction to that and to the court's decision. And what do you support now? What sort of changes do you see? And do you want to increase access for individual health care?
I think the bottom line, they kind of put it back to the voters in the fall. I mean, if you like Obamacare, you might vote one way, and if you don't like it, you might vote a different way. But the bottom line is that health care in general in our country has gone up 15–20% over the last 10 years. When I think about being involved myself with small business for 30-some years,
right,
cost has just gone completely out of sight. I've done numerous town halls. As you know, I do a lot of town halls. We had a lady the other day stand up and say that she's spending $2,000 a month. She's got 6 employees, but $2,000 a month for her and for her employees. And the problem with the health care law that's been put forward in terms of the new law doesn't do anything to curb the cost of health care. And it's really not only affecting Medicare, which is a big issue. We've got to make sure that's viable long-term. Medicare is a great program, but it also is going to affect, obviously, the cost of doing business for a lot of small business people. I had a small business guy I was talking to a few days ago in the district. He's got 70 employees. He said, with the new law, you might have to cut back down to 50. So I think we can do better. We've got to find a way to deliver better quality health care for less. And when I say less, I mean half of what we're paying right now. It's completely out of control, and this does nothing to really deal with the cost escalation.
Well, the cost is the key thing for most small business people. They're looking at that on, they've got payroll, they've got expansion, all those things, and adding an additional cost is an impact.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. I tell a lot of people, many times the employer, even if they pay all of it, but many times they might pay half or they might pay 75%, but it pushes onto the working family, the individual. His cost might be, it used to be $100, now it's $300, now it's $500, and they're paying more themselves, and the employer's paying more. And actually getting less. There's many times you'll see people have coverage where they have they got to get to a $5,000 minimum they've got to pay out before the coverage kicks in. That's not health insurance. I mean, we need to find a way to bring down the overall cost of health care to help small businesses be able to move forward. I have one of the largest employers in my region. His cost last year went up over $1 million in 1 year for health care. Well, when you're spending an extra $1 million in health care, there's a lot of jobs that aren't being created as a result of that. That was his point he was trying to make to me. 1 year, over $1 million increase in his health care costs. That's crazy.
Well, hopefully when you come back into session, we'll be able to hear some of the new ideas and alternative proposals that you'll hopefully put forward. But another significant thing that's going to be happening in this new session is the Bush-era tax cuts are due to expire at the end of this year. Now, what's your position on that? Are you in favor of extending them, or are you just seeing them expire?
I think President Clinton said you shouldn't raise taxes in a recession. I don't care how you look at it. Technically, you might argue we're not in a recession, but anybody realizes that has common sense that things aren't the way they should be, and we're not growing the kind of jobs. You're growing at 2% a year. You're actually going backwards. And the bottom line, we've got to do more to stimulate the economy. And in terms of, and if you put those tax cuts end up sunsetting, and everybody gets pushed to the higher bracket. And I mean everybody. It's not just talking about the rich. It's going to affect small business, a lot of small business people, and it's going to affect anybody that's at a 10% rate goes to 15, 15 goes to 20. So everybody gets affected. I think it's the largest tax increase since World War II. So it would have a huge negative effect on a very sluggish economy already. So minimally, it needs to be pushed off for a year or two, get our economy back on track. But I'm not for raising taxes. I think the taxpayers in Manatee and Sarasota County pay more than their fair share, and I'm against raising taxes.
You see this issue being kind of on the table till after the general election?
I think so, but there's going to be a lot that's going to be done in that period from November to the first part of the year that we're going to have to deal with if we're going to deal with that tax. But to raise taxes, and it's just not the right thing to do at this time for small business.
And the obvious follow-up question is what's being done for tax reform? Is there a comprehensive tax reform package being discussed?
Well, the tax reform hasn't been dealt with in a material way since 1986, since Reagan was the president, and we need to have tax reform. I'm on the committee, Ways and Means Committee. Right underneath it always says it's a tax writing committee, and we're looking at that aggressively. We've had a lot of hearings with small business, individuals, people doing business abroad, and we have some of the highest taxes in the world, and our goal is to figure out how to make it simpler, flatter, fair. The tax code right now is over 73,000 pages. So when you look at it, especially from a small business person standpoint, the cost to them just makes no sense. So we want to just get it much simpler, much flatter, fair, and eliminate a lot of the loopholes. And then, we also have gigantic corporations that are making hundreds of millions of dollars and paying no taxes. It's not every corporation, but it's a lot of them. That's not fair. So the bottom line, I think, eliminate a lot of the deductions. Let's go to a flatter, fair, simpler tax where you don't have to have a bunch of accountants and attorneys trying to figure out what you owe.
Well, one of the things that, aside from taxes is also spending. And, the super committee, the failure, I should say, of the super committee resulted in automatic spending cuts that will take effect fairly soon in 2013. Now, do you support letting these cuts occur? And if the cuts occur, do you want to exempt the military? Because there are cuts coming to all phases of the military growth. Is that correct?
Well, I'm in my 6th year, and I've been in business for 30-some years. When I first got up there in 2007, our taxes or revenues were roughly around $2.6 trillion. We spent $130 billion deficit. Our revenues since then have fallen 20% on average, $400 or $500 billion. But yet, in the last 4 years, what's happened with this administration, this government, is we've increased spending by 30%, 35%. So instead of spending $2.7 trillion, we're spending $3.7 trillion, but we're only taking in $2.2. So in other words, to make it simple, we have enough money in terms of tax revenues to pay the bills through June 27th. The rest of the year, we're borrowing from the Chinese and the Japanese. And that's why I believe, and my first bill I introduced is a constitutional balanced budget amendment that says simply you don't spend more than you take in. Right. My latest bill that I'm one of the lead co-sponsors on is no budget, no pay. If Congress does not put together a budget like the state of Florida that balances and makes some sense and doesn't produce a budget, because the Senate hasn't had a budget in over 3 years, they don't get paid. And I think we need to institute that to bring some common sense in terms of our financial well-being for America.
And one of the things too, the super committee thing is that this is going to be across the board cuts. I mean, this is going to be cuts throughout on every program, specifically the military as well. I mean, obviously that's a major concern.
Yeah, that's why I think we have to look at these cuts. I think the biggest job that we've got as a member of Congress is national security. And I don't think that's the place that we should be necessarily looking for cuts. That being said, they can always be more efficient, but I think we have to look at where we're going to redirect some of these cuts in terms of going forward, because at the end of the day, if it's got any cuts in terms of veterans or seniors, in terms of Medicare or Social Security, I'm against that.
Well, one of the reasons I know that you ran for office in the first place is about government spending. You felt that government spending was out of control. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on government spending. Is it better? Is it getting worse? And what can be done to control spending? And in what areas do you see that?
Well, I think it's like the state of Florida. 49 out of 50 governors have constitutional balanced budget amendments. It's like the county, Manatee County or Sarasota counties or the city of Bradenton. You can't spend more than you take in. If you want more, go back to the voters or go back to the citizens and ask for more. But the bottom line, we shouldn't be spending every year $1.4 trillion more than we take in. And that's why I think we need a constitutional balanced budget amendment. This isn't even one party or the other. They've both failed. In the last 50 years, we've only balanced the budget 5 times.
Right.
That's got to end, because I don't know if it's 2, 5, or 8 years. At some point, you go bankrupt. Our debt, when I got there, was $8 trillion and some change. Today, it's 16. It's closing in on $16 trillion. So if you look at it, normally the cost of money is 5%. We're closing on quickly on 20 trillion. You're going to have $1 trillion, which is 1,000 billions. You can't even imagine that amount. And taxpayer money that you're going to have to spend of taxpayers' money before you pay out one benefit in Medicare, Social Security, or for our veterans. So seniors and veterans are going to be hit the worst if we continue this unbelievable amount of spending. It's unprecedented. I mean, if you look back, maybe the average deficits in the last 20 years have been 200 billion. Now it's 1.4 trillion the last 4 years. It's suffocating the economy and creating a lot of uncertainty, and that's frankly why a lot of people aren't investing that could invest, because of the uncertainty.
And that's an interesting point, and I want to follow up, if I may. Your district, 13th, soon to be the 16th, but the 13th is one of the oldest by age congressional districts. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on what you want to do to protect Medicare? Because that's a critical thing for your constituents.
Well, the bottom line, I think there's adjustments that have got to be made at some point in terms of Medicare to make sure it's viable for the next generation, the next couple of generations. Medicare is a very good program. The other party has already, the administration has already cut Medicare by $716 billion. I don't think there should be any cuts. I think we need to find a way on a bipartisan basis to make Medicare viable, not just for this generation, but for the next couple of generations.
Right.
Because the reality, where are you going to go get health care? We're just talking about health care expense anywhere when you turn 65, 60, 65, whatever that number need be. So Medicare is a commitment and a promise we've made. I feel very strong about Medicare as well as Social Security. But we need to make some adjustments in Medicare, not for anybody 55 and older, but the next generation, to make sure that it works. So our proposal, it was just a proposal that we passed through the House and went nowhere in the Senate, is the idea that anybody 55 and above, nothing changes, is identically the same. Under 55, you can either take Medicare as it is, or if you want to look at government options or programs that members of Congress or anybody else has, you can take a look at those options. But again, that was something we got passed out of the House, never went anywhere in the Senate, but we've got to do something on a bipartisan basis going forward that's in the best interest of seniors and veterans.
And I think that's the agreement, that everybody sees this as an issue that has to be resolved, because as the baby boomers are here now, you want to make sure that this system is solvent and in place for years to come.
Yeah, they've done this in the past, the Congresses, 20 years ago or so. They've done it where they make tweaks or adjustments. People are living a lot longer. The bottom line is that, because of the demographics, the baby boomers are coming up. There's 10,000 people every day in America turning 65 for the next 30 years. Every day, 10,000 people. And they're living a lot longer than my parents or your grandparents lived. And so we need to make sure, if we're going to make sure it's available not only for the current generation, but for future generations, we've got to be able to make sure that we make tweaks or adjustments that make sense long term. And we've got to do that together and do what's right for America.
Well, Congressman, I want to go off into another subject area, because a lot of your constituents are veterans in this area. And you recently brought the House Veteran Affairs Committee chairperson to USF, and we had the opportunity to tape that, and it was well attended. It was an excellent presentation on his behalf. Tell us a little bit about that visit and what's being done to help ensure our veterans get the benefits that they've earned.
Well, Jeff Miller is the chairman of the committee. I served for 4 years with Jeff Miller. He's very focused on making sure that any veterans that have earned a benefit, that they keep their benefits. And again, because of all these other programs, they're putting pressure on some of the benefits that our veterans have earned. I wanted to bring Jeff here so he could hear directly from veterans out of Manatee and Sarasota County to hear their concerns and thoughts. And, of course, one of the big things is TRICARE. They're wanting them to pay more. But again, a lot of our veterans feel like, hey, I've earned that. You've promised me that. And we need to figure out, make the adjustment somewhere else, not in terms of their health care. And I'm fighting for our veterans to make sure anything they've earned, we've promised, we need to keep those promises.
Well, one of the things that came through that presentation and that town hall that you held, people were very appreciative of the effort by you and Representative Miller to bring their presence to the veterans to say that, we want to listen to your concerns. And you had a very appreciative audience of veterans there who really were thankful that you took the time to do that.
Well, one of the things I've tried to do with veterans or seniors or anybody else, I probably do more town halls. I do a lot of telephone conference calls because when I first ran, and I'm a guy who's a blue-collar kid, it's been in business for 30 years, but when I first ran, what I've heard for 20 years before that constantly is nobody's listening. So I've tried to bring like the chairman of the VA and try to do a lot of town halls and get their questions, but more importantly, their comments, and then take it back and represent them the best I can. Because I tell people it's nice to be a congressman. I'm humbled as a blue-collar kid, but at the end of the day, I'm a representative, and that's why I bring Jeff, because I want Jeff hears the concerns from around the country, but I want to hear him him to hear our concerns and comments from our local veterans.
Well, you've had the opportunity over the few years now, to bring a number of people. You've brought the Ray LaHood down. You've brought down the head of the transportation, John Micah, to talk about things. So you're bringing people here who can make something happen for this community and your constituents.
Well, the bottom, excuse me, the bottom line that I do it here is because I want them to hear about our local concerns. John Micah is the head of transportation. Ray LaHood is the secretary in the administration with transportation. I just had the head person for Social Security administrator down here because at the end of the day, I want to make sure things that have been promised or committed, or if we've got local concerns that might be different than what they're hearing in Wisconsin or Minnesota, I want to make sure they hear it straight from our people, and it's been very productive.
And I think this community is very appreciative of having the opportunity to listen to these people who are decision makers. Now, Congressman, I want to take a few minutes here, if I may, to talk about the crushing issue of the day, and that's the economy. It's still struggling. Even though there's indicators that say that some things are improving, home sales may be, improving, but at the end of the day, there's still, we're still in a struggle. What do you think should be done to create more opportunity, more jobs for this economy?
Well, the bottom line, and I'm just going to be very candid about it because I was very open, 4 years ago, 2 years ago, open-minded, but the administration doesn't understand. It's all about the small business guy and what they go through. And you hear this comment, you didn't build that, but set that aside for a minute. The bottom line is they've got to be much more pro-business oriented. And we've got to help small businesses up and down Main Street. You see all around Manatee, a lot of people have 2 or 6 or 10 employees. That's who we are. If you look at the Manatee Chamber, they have 2,000 businesses. Most of them are 20 employees or less. We've got to create a better environment with flatter taxes, less frivolous lawsuits, helping less frivolous regulations. There's a lot of rules and regulations put on small business. Help them be more successful because they're the job creators. There's not, unfortunately, that kind of mindset in Washington. That's got to change because if we don't help them be more successful, we're not going to get the kind of jobs that we need. If you look at Steve Jobs, I mean, he started out with an idea and created hundreds of thousands of jobs. We've got to be help more with startups. We've got to help more with entrepreneurs willing to take a risk. And we've got to respect what they put on the line. Many of them are getting second mortgages on homes, borrowing money from their families and in-laws. We've got to help them create an environment, a culture in Washington to help them be more successful because I tell people it's not just a war on terror. I'm not talking about being occupiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. The other big war is the economic war that wasn't there in the 80s with China and India. They're competitors. We've got to help our people raise their game to be more successful.
And that's an excellent point. I think you've been kind of in the forefront of being a champion for small businesses. And one of the things I do want you to take a moment to, recently Governor Scott came to Port Manatee for a groundbreaking ceremony and an economic forum. He kind of recognizes the importance of the port, and you've been singing its praises for many, many years. Tell us a little bit about what you think of Port Manatee and why it's an important economic multiplier for this region.
Well, the ports in Florida make up $68 billion of economic activity. We've got 14 ports. One of the ports I think has the biggest opportunity is Port Manatee. We've got a lot of land. We're the closest port to Panama Canal. It's a real opportunity for growth. It probably has about 20 to 25,000 jobs now, directly, indirectly. I think we can double it. The Panama Canal is doubling the size of its capability. I'm actually the chairman of the Panama Caucus. I've met with the president of Panama. I've had the ambassador here in Manatee County, and they're very excited about the future potential of our port. So our goal is to make sure that we're doing everything we can to really grow the port. By growing the port, we can get the economic diversity. One of the things that hurts us in this region, Manatee or Sarasota County, we're so fixated on 2 or 3 industries. Tourism's doing pretty good, but home building and construction, when that's off, it affects everybody. We need more economic diversity. The port is a huge economic diversity driver for this region.
And we can hope that they have continued success with the recent hiring of their new port director, Carlos Bucaras. Brings a lot of excitement and energy to that position. I think it can only continue to grow and prosper. And you know, I think Manatee County is also looking at those kind of same opportunities. Sports, making it a sports destination with the IMG and Premier Sports Complex. There is that idea here, that groundswell of doing things, but it needs a lot of help and support. Now, Congressman, we're running out of time here, and I just want to tell you again how much we appreciate you taking the time to do this. But this is a very exciting time. Republican National Convention starting. You know, it's almost the beginning of a new season here. Tell us what your final thoughts would be, and what you want this community to know about your efforts.
Well, I hope, because you mentioned the convention, both conventions, that we stop getting out of a lot of the negativity that these campaigns bring on, unfortunately. We need to be talking about what's best for America and Americans. We need to be talking about jobs and the economy. We need to start talking about how we're going to fix the debt and the deficit, because that puts veterans and seniors and their benefits they've earned at risk. So I hope in the next 2 months we can get onto a dialogue talking about the future of the country, what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, and get off a lot of the nonsense. Because the bottom line is that we've got some serious issues, we've got some great opportunities, but we need to be talking about the opportunities and making sure. And I'll just close with the idea that as a blue-collar kid, I believe that America is a very special place. I love America. The bottom line is, you can start with nothing, work hard, play by the rules, and anything's possible in America. We want to make sure we keep that dream, the American dream, alive for our kids and our grandkids.
Well, Congressman, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to do this. You certainly have your work cut out for you. You've got a lot of things, but you always rise to the challenge. And we would welcome you back at any other time to discuss some of the things that you've done in the interim. Perhaps come back after the convention and give us an update about what you found and what you thought was successful there.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping there'll be a great convention, and I'm hoping also the Democrats have a good convention. And like I said earlier, I hope we can talk about the vision of this country going forward.
Well, Congressman, we'll welcome you to come back at any time that you would like to.
And thanks, Charles, for the opportunity.
And thank you for joining us on this special legislative update. I'm Charles Clapsaddle for Manatee Educational Television.